Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. Have you ever heard about Harul Perum Jyoti Valahar Swamigal? No, I haven't. So hello everyone once again. Welcome to Satsang. So today we'll talk about a very important subject. It seems maybe for some meaningless, but it is quite important. You see, your life follows a direction, a common direction, and when the spiritual path starts in a serious manner, it's like a bypass, a different direction, an alternative path that opens up. And this new path comes with different obstacles, different tests, different rules altogether. Whatever you do in the worldly context, in the worldly life, is much different from the quest for liberation. So, in a worldly life, the goal is to make personality stronger, more defined, more solidly built, and the attitudes that the world is asking you for you to grow, in a sense, at certain levels at least, they explore exactly the opposite that in your quest for liberation. So the majority of times there is a low self-esteem that gets overcompensated with pride, arrogance, uh, self-worth, and all of this. And this is good in a way, but in the long run, this is not good. Why is that so? Because those who have the calling and who have had the opportunity to have that calling for quite a while, eventually their vision of self-importance gets shocked because they start to see that no matter what strengths they have, what knowledge they have, what sense of personal worth they have, it doesn't go far. And the thirst continues and it just grows and grows and grows, eventually leading to dead ends, unbearable dead ends. And most of the time, this has to do with a vision which is not clear of your real situation. So when that path starts opening up, of course, it will threaten, endanger, question the path that you are leading because they are of conflicting values. Conflicting values. And at that moment, you're not aware of the actual importance of all of that. Sometimes you're lucky enough that in the worldly life, life puts you in a very tough spot. And that is lucky because it will give perspective. Other times you don't have that. Everything is very good or even wonderful, whatever that means. And there's just this calling that brings restlessness. But there's everything that your values, those worldly values, are telling you. It's that's very good. This is the best or whatever. But still, you're only getting emptiness out of that. But that's not enough because emptiness, that kind of emptiness, doesn't clarify. Because into that perspective, you're like a prince or a king in a situation, and you look for the situation where you are the king, and you are getting all of that plus the satisfaction, the realization, the purpose, all of that. And you fail by your own perspective to recognize the opportunities and to be able to honor them. Or even to appreciate them. And when this happens, bitter lessons await for you ahead, if you're a seeker of truth, of course. So, this perspective of where you are, what's the name of the game, the, the values that are involved, this is very important. So, I see many seekers bargaining. Tests come to them, challenges come, and they are bargaining to make this turn. Well, for you to be bargaining in any situation of bargaining, you must have something on your side of worth. And this is mistake number one. Whatever you look at yourself and recognize at this moment, that's the sum total of your ignorance. That's the mountain that prevents the sun from shining. And the universe doesn't owe you anything. So understand that the right vision of this is to see that whatever path, spiritual path, that opens up towards liberation, it is blessing. It's not about merit. There's nothing that you have there. So if you go to make a loan, the bank will ask you for collateral. You have to give some guarantees that if you don't pay, and you must have something that worths anything to make that deal. And in a bank, when people are comfortable and they have money, they can negotiate better interest rates, better conditions. If they are desperate, they take what comes because they know, or at least they hope, it will salvage them. And this is the different types of perspective. So when you think you're in a high position, you tend to bargain more. When you're in a low position, you bargain less or you don't even bargain, depending how desperate you are. And that is perspective. So the perspective for the seeker of truth, it is to look at his own efforts and understanding that whatever comes, it's in the level of desperation, in the sense that it's more than life and death. Is much more than that. And if you're a seeker of truth, you have found by your own investments that it's not going anywhere, that you need help, you need guidance. It's your need, no one else's. Your absolute need. And this will make a difference, not only entering the path, the spiritual path that may be unfolding in front of you. And as you enter into that spiritual path, many changes will come, many things will come. And if things are going in the right direction, it doesn't matter how distant you are from that, but you are walking into direction of guidance. And eventually you will reach guidance, either finding your master or guidance finding you. But let's keep it finding your master, because of self-importance, everybody waits for the voice of guidance to come to them so that they don't have to subject to uncomfortable things, to remove themselves from their precious life and all of that. And that is, well, not only reaching to your master, finding it, or being found by it, but that's just the beginning. Many think that, oh, I found it, and I'll just stay close and everything is solved. It doesn't work like that, because finding your master has a purpose, and it's not just finding him, because if he is a master, he will be continuously pushing you towards that liberation, breaking your beliefs, putting you into circumstances where you have to deal with your shadows and overcome them. Different kinds of situations. So reaching the holy feet of your guru is the beginning of the story, not the end. And if you come full of importances, you will not be able to overcome this, because everybody looks at that situation, not everybody, but some do. Some look at the guru as a tool, others look at the guru as a father figure that is there, the perfect father figure that will be always understanding, will encourage you, will do all these things to you, will carry you in his lap and sing you some lullabies. Even so, that can happen sometimes. The guru and the real seeker of truth, they are lions, or the seeker of truth, a yet to be lion. And if it is a yet to be lion, he needs to discover his own strengths. And for that, he will need the suitable situations for it. And many situations come to the seeker of truth. To test his attitude, his vision, his improvements, his commitment, his sincerity. All of that is always coming. And if that sense of importance, if that perspective is not there, if he started bargaining previously, he will try to continue to bargaining, but he doesn't understand that he is doing that at its own expense. Because if he didn't understood You will have to understand it at some point. It is a life and death situation. There's no time to waste. That opportunity is the most important thing in his life. And he needs to constantly honor that, or else he will lose it. And it doesn't matter how it happens, because it can happen in many ways. What matters is if it happens. And remaining at the feet of your master is not just a choice that you make, or I want or I don't want. It doesn't work like that. Even your want and don't want is conditioned what you have done previously to that. So if you're not honoring, you may want, and circumstances grab you by the neck and pull you out, or you reach the conclusion that you don't want. And of course, if the process hasn't started in the right way, then there's more confusion. And what is the right way? The right way, like I always say, is to intensify your spiritual practices, and through the life of the process, which is awakening, follow its direction that points to guidance. Because if you use logic, oh, I like that master, or I don't like that master, or this and that, doubt will always be there in a very strong way, especially when things get rough. When the Guru speaks nice words, it's very easy to be full of love. But when it gets tough, doubt intensifies. But if it started in the right way, or at least you have recognized that it is your heart which has pointed once, that can be enough. But understand, you have to hold on, or else things will change. They do all the time. Mind changes. It will facilitate some situation, make it all nice, all golden. If it fathers that there's something there to gain. In the same way, when it's being threatened somehow, it will paint everything black so that it can remove. First opportunity, second opportunity, even third opportunity. They are somehow easy, one towards the other. The first one is the easiest of all. So easy that sometimes you don't even see it as an opportunity. Then it becomes more difficult. And third one is even much more difficult. And so on. It is always possible, but always more and more difficult. And the difficulties of the path is to ingrain in you the knowledge of value, so that the next opportunity, you can honor it. This is why many seekers spend a lot of time waiting. These days, many of them don't even see the waiting because there's so much distraction. Okay, so nothing is happening here, but in worldly life, there's a lot of phenomena happening. So they get distracted. But thirst is growing. So the biggest blessing in the path of a seeker of truth is finding that will lead him to liberation. And understanding that whatever he represents as a whole is the sum total of his ignorance. Everything which he will eventually have to let go, good, bad, doesn't matter. So when you're clear of these aspects, it becomes more simple to embrace the challenges that come to you. Simple to embrace, it doesn't mean that it gets easier. It means that it is more and more possible. Because challenges are tailor-made for you, according to your level of weaknesses, fragilities, whatever. And the situations in which this happens, they differ a lot. Probably have changed all your life and managed to be able, you had the blessing of finding your master and being close to him. Eventually you will have to struggle. Either outside conditions are pulling you back, certain things you didn't solve. Either it is inner situations, things you haven't taken real care of, and you have been, how do you say in English? Blah, blah, blah. Looking and I don't reach the word. It's not coveting, it's admiring secretly certain worldly things. And then you get picked up by the nose like a cow and you are being pulled. Or sometimes you are struggling against yourself, against knowing what's right and other wild desires that arise. And those situations, as you evaluate them, well, the first message that they give you is you haven't used your time in the best way. You're not looking at things from the right perspective. Because if you had, this would be a challenge, but it wouldn't be so much of a challenge. It wouldn't be that intense. And believe me, situations come, difficulties will come. It has to be earned every day. If you don't have that vision, and if you don't gain it, you will not be able to continue. Whatever you have, whatever you're bringing, it is your illusion. It is the sum total of it. Whatever is visible is the outer layers of your illusion. It's not even the core. Guidance is that which will enable, if embraced, if honored, will enable to break all those layers and bring out of them your purity, You may have many precious things, but nothing that comes even close to that. So, first things first, finding guidance is the most sacred thing of all. And in the beginning, especially in the beginning, whatever is worldly, whatever is spiritual, connected to your spiritual quest, has to be seen, treated as sacred. Because this will change the way that you look at it, that you'll behave with it, in it. And it makes a lot of a difference. Eventually, in the quest for liberation, a seeker of truth must be willing to sacrifice whatever, even the life of the body. It can be tested even that high. I guarantee you that. There's nothing in this worldly world, there's nothing more important than the life of the body. There's some exceptions, of course, when the mind is not strong, then sometimes to avoid pain, they consider ending the life of the body, but that's for other reasons. But usually, life of the body is the most precious. But even that can be tested. But for the seeker of truth, it doesn't make much of a difference. Because each test, each situations, he knows or he will eventually learn that despite how bitter it can be, it is in its own interest. And if you're conditioning your spiritual work, your spiritual path to understanding, to agreeing or disagreeing, you cannot move forward. Guidance is not there to make you look at what you can see. It is pointing beyond your horizon. And if you're using what you can see to move forward, you won't be able to because it is beyond your horizon. And this is where trust comes in. But even trust is complicated because as trust is not pure, you tend to trust, but in your mind, that means that a specific result will come. So I trust in the divine, I trust in the guidance, so I will be fine. Yes, you will be fine, but sometimes that has a different definition. For sure, you will be facing the next step in your spiritual work. And there's not a common logic involving it because sometimes the reward of going through spiritual torment is more torment instead of less torment, peace and beauty and all of that. And a worldly mind would think, this cannot be right. I've done everything accordingly. This is the first mistake. Probably you didn't, but you always think you do, especially when you're in pain and you just want to release some pressure. And instead of being more peaceful, having a spiritual experience, uplifting one, I'm even worse than when I started. Well, for the worldly mind, that is the logic. So it must be wrong. For the vision of the seeker of truth, it is, aha, so it's not over yet. It is going even much more deeper. And as I'm getting tired, beaten up, my defenses, my resistances are lower and lower. So it has the potential to go even deeper in it. And it's only finished when it finishes. Because, well, eventually you'll get the vision that these are cyclic situations. And if you're not reaching the tip of the cycle, the highest point of the cycle, not a flattened one, but like this, as the upper part is the blissful, the end of that cycle, and the lowest part is the hell part of it. If you haven't reached the tip, sometimes you think you're reaching it, but it's just preparing the next intense hammering. It means it's not over. And as you gain this vision of the cycles, you will see that these cycles, that it is bad and it is worst and it is the worst of the worst. And eventually you will find that it can become worse. It's because most of times, many times, it's because of what you've done correctly and the vision that you have gained into that process, because you start to understand its mechanics. So you gain a few layers of extra endurance, as you can still protect yourself, the core of it, as you are going through with these difficulties. And there's a part of you that understands, which is connected to illusion, and that can survive longer. So in these situations, you discover different layers of hell to help to break what needs to be broken. There is an intelligence in these processes, something that from your standpoint of illusion, you have no vision of. And eventually is, are you closer to guidance? Are your choices taking you closer or further away? If it is closer, good, but keep vigilant, because there is no time to waste. If you're getting more distant, reevaluate if you still have time for that. And that can mean a lot of things. And in the quest for truth, what counts is what you know it's right. what you know it's right, a deeper knowing, something that you have, aha, this is. Either it came in a powerful spiritual experience, or in that moment your heart said, this is it. It's not what you think in this moment. Because what you think in this moment is circumstantial, and it will change when circumstances change. So when you recognize guidance, you stick to it, no matter what your mind says, because it will say a lot of things when it's getting displeased. Because the mind always believes that it will reach liberation and it will become this super powerful entity full of bliss, joy, and depending on the delusions that are there, this can manifest in different ways, different visions of a brighter future. And many of these things, they are not visible. Oh, it's just a happiness. It takes time and deeper work to encounter these things. And even the most bright seekers, in a sense, the more brilliant ones that seem the more pure and more beautiful, will find some difficulty, some difficult and what they will call very ugly things to work. And if you don't embrace that which you know it's right, if you're just embracing that which you think it's right, that will change to the opposite and you will fall down. The same thing that helped you stand up will be that which will knock you out. So for the seeker of truth, it's not this, it has to be something higher. If there's not something higher, then you haven't done the work. You have been just choosing mentally. And in that situation, you can be facing the gates of liberation and you just think, well, it may be a garage or something like that. That will be a very disturbing, constant presence. So the advice is, if something real is coming, opportunity, blessing, opening, don't bargain. Embrace. And especially of all, always work on your humility. If humility is not growing, it's not walking in the right direction. Because let's give an example. You're making a garden. And eventually, just let's say it for the sake of the example, you will eventually use a very, very, very powerful fertilizer. A very powerful fertilizer. This, we are equating this to the fruits of your spiritual practice. And whatever is there in your garden will flourish intensely with that powerful fertilizer. So if you haven't been taking off the wild herbs, the bushes, and that which is not edible, and you are planting edible plants, which are much, much weaker than the wild ones, the native ones, when you put the fertilizer, the wild ones will just grow and the other ones will disappear on top of that, on the bottom of that, of course. So eventually that power fertilizer will come. People are desperate for it to come, but they don't need because it will come. What they should be desperate about is to make sure they have taken all the weeds out. And for those who have gardens, they know that they take these weeds today. Tomorrow, the seeds that are there will sprout, new weeds will come, and they will sprout, and they will come, and they will sprout. So if you're letting these weeds to the point of they sprout and they let go of their seeds again, more seeds will be on the ground. Many generations of weeds will be there. But if you're taking them out as they are sprouting and you're taking them out, eventually it will be the end of the seeds. But it will take time. For those who have a garden, they know. It seems endless, those seeds. But as you are taking care of it, then those edible plants will be the highest majority by far. And when that powerful fertilizer comes, they will grow exponentially because they don't have major challenges. And the other ones that will grow, they will be much, much less. And they will be covered by the good ones. And by the absence of the sun passing towards them, they will eventually be weak and die. Eventually, the fruits of spiritual work comes. But if you have been neglecting it, it will be a bigger challenge for you. So humility has always to be the fruit of your spiritual work. If it's not being, it will not make it easier. So humility is always a way to check on things. So any stance that you are taking in a situation reveals from where you're coming. If you're bargaining something, does this comes from a humility stance? You can always check this, crossing it with the position of humility. And whatever you find as in not very luminous characteristics, work on them as you recognize them until they are solved. Or else you're just trying to make strong fortresses on top of sand or swamp. Eventually it will sink. It will not be, it won't hold because ground is not solid. Guidance is the final place. From there onwards, only liberation. There's no other deviating, there's no deviating from that. Because if there is for you, you will deviate and you will continue in the cycles of delusion. Okay. So next satsang will be Saturday, 9:30 in the morning, Brazilian time, UTC -3. Until then, make the best use of your time. And like always, make it real. Make it real.